Hey YouTube, how you doing? It's Graham, and thought I would first just say thanks again for all the support with the chest surgery stuff. It's been great to have comments and messages. But I've been watching a few videos on YouTube and kind of catching up on things. Admittedly, it's been a long time since I've watched some of the subscriptions and whatnot that I have. And so I decided that I had seen quite a few guys doing kind of videos about how they realized they were trans and kind of what their process was. So I thought, why not? I would kind of do one for myself too and talk about that for a little bit. It's actually kind of an interesting thing to talk about since, I've been transitioning for about 3 years now and kind of knew I was trans way beyond that. Um, so it's something I feel like I kind of thought more about in the beginning of my transition. So thinking about it now it's kind of interesting to reflect back. Um, but yeah, so how did I realize I was trans? I mean, I feel like it was a process. I ever since I was a little kid, was always not at all like couldn't identify with being a girl, and I have memories of being a kid and being forced to wear like dresses to things. And there was actually one time, I think I was in a wedding. I might have been the flower girl or something, and had the frilly little dress and all the accessories. And after the wedding, I got home and I was like, I went to my mom and I was like, "Can I put my real clothes on now?" And that's a story that my mom tells. And so I think that, ever since I was really young, I was kind of rebelling against kind of gender norms as far as like, feminine dress. But of course, I didn't know what trans was, or I didn't know I was trans at that point. My journey, I mean, I came out in college, which was like 93, 94-ish, as lesbian. And at that point in time, really kind of embraced the whole butch lesbian kind of title, if you will, and really got into kind of queer culture and queer community, and primarily kind of women's community and women's studies, and for a long time was very much identified with kind of the butch femme um, kind of subculture of the lesbian community, and that was something that I really resonated with. And I would say from 93-ish, on into the early 2000s, identifying as butch was something that I really was proud of, and I'm still really proud of, but it was what felt like it fit. But there was always this kind of, how do I say this, kind of like this internal something that didn't fit right, just like this feeling of, this doesn't quite match. And I remember that, I would always be, or not always, but I would often be in groups of other, like lesbians, and I just wouldn't quite feel like I fit in. There was always something, and I was always just never really felt comfortable with being female. I never felt comfortable with feminine pronouns, and it was so odd for such a long time because, at that point in time, I was going by my birth name, which is very, feminine. It's not one of those kind of ambiguous names, and obviously female pronouns, and just feeling like I couldn't refer to myself as she. I really had a hard time, with that. But feeling like, trans was just so much of something I couldn't really see for myself. Part of it at the time was that I grew up in Missouri, and just resources were very slim in Kansas City, Missouri for transitioning, and I just felt like finding any sort of trans-friendly practitioners and whatnot would probably be very hard. And the other bigger part of it was just that I was really scared. I mean, I remember thinking about it and occasionally thinking like, God, I wish I could do this. I mean, I knew the options were out there. I had done a lot of research and online and, books and that sort of thing. And I think I knew in the back of my head I wanted to do it, but I was just really afraid. And it was kind of a convenient thing for me just because, well, not convenient, but it was something that I told myself that it was like, well, I live in Kansas City. There's not going to be as much resources here. If I ever do get to move to the Bay Area, I'll think about it. And so I told myself that for a really long time, and identified as butch. And then in 2002, well, actually, I moved out here in 2004, but in 2002, there was some drama in all of my life that happened, and my dad died unexpectedly, and my mom had a major medical issue, which I'll go tell you all that in some other video. But I really started looking at life and just thinking about my own mortality and thinking about what do I want out of my own life, and began to be even more and more uncomfortable with who I was and just not feeling at all comfortable with being female. And so kind of like I had it in my head that once I could move to San Francisco, I would more than likely transition. It took me a few years to get out here. I moved out here in 2004. And when I moved out here, immediately I took on the name Graham. And I had decided I would do this right before I moved out, so I left my friends in Kansas City, calling me by my birth name, and then moved to San Francisco, and it was kind of a new start, and I can introduce myself to the new people that I met as Graham, and nobody had to do the name change or kind of process that. At the time, I was still using female pronouns there, though. So it took a few more years of being out here and kind of getting involved in the community, and also just, meeting other trans guys and doing more research. But the thing that really changed for me is I ended up getting a wonderful doctor, and she's with the Kaiser system here in California. And the very first time I met with her, when I just selected her as my general practitioner, I remember this so clearly. Like, she walked in the room, and after the like, hello, nice to meet you, pleasantry stuff, she was like, I just want to ask you, what pronouns do you prefer? And that was like this light bulb went on, and I was like, finally, some medical person that's going to get it. And I remember so clearly, like, I just about broke down and started crying in that meeting, or that first meeting with her. And, I've had the same doctor since, and she's just been really amazing. So if any of you are kind of Bay Area and you want a good referral to a doctor in the Kaiser system, I can totally give you her name. But, so yeah, I, had that first meeting with her, which really wasn't about trans stuff. It was a general new doctor check-in. And I started talking about it really for the first time in a medical sense. And, my doctor was really awesome, gave me a lot of resources, said, think about it. And I did. I mean, it took me several months after that initial meeting to decide to go on T. But I really feel like the fact that I got a really good doctor who I could tell was going to be super supportive if I decided to do this, and was also really knowledgeable, made all the difference in the world. So, I'm 37. I started testosterone when I was 34. Yeah, 34-ish. It'll be 3 years on testosterone in March, so I'm not quite at 3. I'm like 2.5. And it's definitely been a journey, of doing all of this. But as far as the topic of this, how I realized I was trans, I mean, it was a long time coming, and it was something I think that I knew very early in life but didn't have a name for, and then had a name for but was scared of it, and just really had to come to my own process, come to terms with it, do a lot of research, and really accept it within myself first. So that's my story. There's a lot of things I didn't mention in there, just too much to say in 10 minutes, but that's the brief version for me. But yeah, the thing that made all the difference for me was really moving here to a more kind of queer, trans friendly space, and then just having a really, kind of on it medical practitioner, and that made everything so much easier. So yeah, that's kind of how I kind of started thinking about and adjusted to, and kind of, how I came to terms with in a very quick, brief form. So, all right, thanks for watching.